Hi, I'm Sarah Gabriel, former special education teacher turned social entrepreneur and founder of In Good Company. We help businesses build thriving teams by giving them the confidence and tools to effectively lead employees with disabilities. This podcast is for leaders creating interability workplaces. Together, we'll dig into what it takes to lead with both heart and business savvy and build workplaces where contributors of all abilities are not just included, but essential. Welcome to In Good Company. Today, we are joined by Jody Tick, Executive Director of Sunflower Bakery, a nonprofit social enterprise based in Rockville, Maryland, that provides workforce development training in pastry arts and hospitality for young adults with learning differences. Since its founding in 2009, Sunflower Bakery has trained over 550 individuals, equipping them with the skills and confidence needed for meaningful employment in culinary and hospitality industries. Under Jody's leadership, Sunflower Bakery continues to expand its impact, offering programs that blend hands-on experience with mentorship and demonstrating how food can be a powerful tool for social change. And just so you know, you can support the Sunflower Bakery by shopping their handcrafted pastries, cookies, and special occasion desserts online at sunflowerbakery.org. Or if you're in the area, visit them at their Rockville location. Every purchase helps fund inclusive job training for young adults with learning differences. Jody, welcome to the podcast today. We are so honored to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I feel like I'm developing all these long distance friendships when we get to have all these calls. We're coming to you from Georgia, you're in Maryland. You have a track record for success in moving the needle on unemployment rates for those with disabilities. Tell us the origin story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't take credit for that, but I can speak to it. I've been with and had the privilege of leading Sunflower for the past 4 years. I'm going into my 5th year in August. Sunflower actually started in 2009, and it started really with a conversation among friends who were concerned about the lack of meaningful employment opportunities for young adults with learning differences in the DC metropolitan area. And from that conversation, somebody had experienced a nonprofit, another person was a social worker, another person had lived experience. They did all the work, and fast forward to today, where we are a full-fledged nonprofit social enterprise. And so the whole intent of why we exist today is the whole reason why they had that conversation so long ago, 16 years ago. It was to close the employment gap for young adults with learning differences. And I'm so pleased to say, and you mentioned this a little bit, we are a workforce development training program. We train in pastry arts, hospitality, and we actually have recently launched a culinary program, which I'm thrilled about. This is all part of the plan, if you will, to reach more young adults, increase our enrollment in our programs, and offer more training opportunities for young adults with learning differences. And how we think about that, is there a need, a demand from our students? We're very student focused. What do the job prospects look like after they graduate? And then 3, is there an opportunity for our social enterprise component? That's really kind of our model piece to this. And so for culinary, there was all 3. We had a lot of students come to us saying they wanted that program. The market is rich for fast casuals and food service workers and institutions. And in addition to our amazing bakery items, we now have a whole line of prepared kosher foods, which is great. So this is part of the evolution of how we came to be, starting way back when in 2009 in a small kitchen in a local synagogue, to literally last year where we piloted culinary in the same synagogue. So it's really full circle. And through that time, lots of different innovations have happened, from a barista program in 2015 at our first kind of brick and mortar on Executive Boulevard, to a full-fledged hospitality program in 2021 during COVID, taking advantage of adversity and turning it into opportunity, and then culinary. So it's been a journey, if you will, and we're still on it. So it's been an amazing journey. And our goal, we don't keep folks here, we train them, and we find competitive employment for them in the communities where they live.
Absolutely. And Jody, you're hinting at a question that's coming later about those employer partnerships, because they are so important. And I think Sunflower Bakery has done it in one of the best ways I've seen. So I do want to talk about that. Let's get back to the journey first, because that was a big story squeezed into a few short minutes. And there was a lot that happened in between, I'm sure. So, if you could share with us the highs and the lows, a few examples of unique challenges that came when building this kind of social enterprise.
I mean, we literally started out in a tiny kitchen on Ziggy Lane in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and got to the point where we quickly outgrew it. So it was very organic in the beginning, if you will, like just trying different things like a startup and seeing what literally stuck to the wall, right? And figuratively.
And tell us about your participants at that time. Where were they coming from?
Yeah, so a lot of that was working with local schools, word of mouth, and working to develop partnerships with state agencies that work with people and provide benefits to young adults, people with learning disabilities. And so in Maryland, it's the Division of Rehabilitation Services. So developing that partnership. And so helping them understand who we are, what we do, and becoming approved in their system. So as they talk to their clients or consumers, and those clients are talking about what their career aspirations are, we are kind of a tool in their toolkit, and they can refer students to us. So that was gradual over time, and it took a lot of time to kind of build that awareness in the community. And I'm talking everything from our friends at doors to transition teachers in the Montgomery County Public School System to disability experts in the community, and then reaching out beyond that into, the District of Columbia, as well as the rest of the metropolitan area. There's still work to do. I mean, that is part of the challenge is we are in one place and our training is on location, right? So like any metropolitan area, like the challenge is you've got to get here, right? So part of being kind of student centered is where we are located in Rockville on Halpine Road. It's not a highly trafficked area. It's not a commercial area, but we're right across the street from public transportation.
I was hoping you would say that. That is so strategic and necessary if you're going to be working with this community, because transportation is hard.
Absolutely. And when you're in a major metropolitan area, transportation and logistics is everything, right? Our classes, we set expectations from day one about what you're going to experience in employment. And you have to be here on time, and be ready to go for your training. And there's only so many opportunities we're going to give you, right? To be late without calling in, to be late and not ready to go before we say this is just not working. So it's a rigorous program in terms of expectations, but also in terms of the skills that we're building. So a lot of this happened over time until we realized that we had really outgrown the space. And what we were doing is, because we integrate our students in everything we make or sell, we were doing the making integration, but the selling as part of a small kitchen on Ziggy Lane, we didn't have that opportunity, which is why we opened the Cafe Sunflower in 2015, which is on Executive Boulevard in an office building. So that provided an opportunity for accessing our food closer to where people are, but providing kind of more of a hospitality environment. So we could have students there selling items or having items there to pick up. And the important piece of this is, culinary and pastry are very much back of the house. Hospitality is front of the house, right? So it caters to a different interest and personality, which is also very important and was very intentional in building out what was first the barista program at the cafe to the hospitality program expansion here, because we want to make sure that we have enough training options that meet student interests. And I speak to this with lived experience because I have a son with a developmental disability, and I know this world is you can do this or that. Well, we don't think that that's good enough, and we want to provide more opportunities.
Absolutely. Is it paid? Are they paying for the learning program? How does that work?
Correct. Well, good question. We are a fee-based program, and we have hired some students. We do have paid students at the cafe now, paid graduates, excuse me. And we have hired some of our graduates here in pastry. And sometimes we will do that on a seasonal basis based upon, are we seeing some students finish the program and still needing to refine skills? That might be an option. And do we have the need, right? Is it a some of this work can be a little seasonal, especially in the bakery. So around holidays and special occasions and things of that nature. So that's how we gauge that. But our programs are fee-based.
Okay, that makes sense. And the part of the, again, we'll get to this, but the paychecks do come. Usually, I'm now gathering it happens when they're connected to a community employer partner, and they find full-time employment after graduating.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And to clarify
yeah.
that a little bit, not everybody wants full-time employment. So we tailor their employment plan here based
Mhm.
upon what their interests are, looking at their strengths and weaknesses, right? As well as kind of what kind of opportunity they're looking for, what type of environment, and what type of hours too. So yes, we've worked with over 65 employer partners throughout our history as an organization, and they've ranged from small mom and pop organizations such as Coffee Republic, Carmen's Italian Ice, to large businesses such as major chain grocery stores. We just had 4 students placed at a new Wegmans that is coming to Rockville Pike. We've worked with Safeway, we've worked with Giant. We work with Tate, which is a well-known bakery and cafe in the Northeast that has been expanding to DC and other metropolitan areas. So a wide range of organizations. And when it comes to hospitality, we train in food, but there's a lot of different opportunities in hospitality beyond being in food. And everything we train on is transferable.
I was about to say the skills that you learn in food service, guest service, those can go into so many other industries and jobs and workplaces. So that's really smart that you've been thinking about that, and it makes total sense.
Yeah. And for example, you mentioned, so we do have nationwide shipping on select items. Most of our online orders are for local delivery or pickup. And we started that based upon what we were seeing during COVID, right? Lots of
Mm,
people were ordering online and having deliveries.
I remember.
And so we started that as well, because if you know how to pack and fulfill an order, it doesn't have to be food, it can be almost anything.
So your team or your participants have the option to learn packing and delivering services.
They fulfill our orders that are that are nationwide shipping.
That's a great skill. Really great skill in the world we live in. Okay, so I know I keep dipping my toe into the employment conversation or the employer partner. I still want to keep talking about that, but let's go back just a little bit further. When you were talking about the standards that you hold for your participants, for your trainees, you only get so many strikes before you're out in terms of punctuality and sticking to the expectations that you lay out. It sounds like you have a high bar for your trainees. And I wonder if that bar was always high, if you started out, in one place and you realized you needed to raise the bar over time. Because what I found, my career started as a second grade teacher for students with learning differences. And I was susceptible to the temptation to coddle at times or be a little bit more lenient because they might need a little bit of extra patience because they have a unique circumstance or whatever it might be, but at times that can be harmful, that mentality. So how did you get to the standard that you hold today for your trainees?
It's a great question. I think it starts with our instructors.
Mm.
All of our instructors are trained experts in their field. So all the pastry arts instructors have gone to pastry school.
Mm-hmm.
Culinary school, right? If you're a hospitality instructor, you have experience in the hospitality field, or you have workforce development education behind you. And so how we start is, what are our industry standards and how do
Mm-hmm.
we align our curriculum with those standards? Because we're not doing our students a service if
No,
we have less than.
right.
And ultimately, if we want our students to land a job and then sustain a job, we have to fully prepare them for those expectations. And doing anything less is really not doing our students a service. And frankly, it's our brand out there too. So the
That's
beauty
true.
also of Sunflower is developing employer partner relationships takes time. We are not placing students just to place them. We're placing them to
Mm,
see them succeed. And we want to make sure that they're going into an environment where that can happen, right? So when we develop an employer partnership, we go see their site. We have them come here so they fully understand what our work is and what we're trying to do. And then they do maybe need to shift their culture into one that is valuing more inclusivity, right? And that's not an easy thing to do. And that's why I will be very honest with you. There are still challenges. There are still some doors that are not open to us for a
Mm.
variety of different reasons, for myths around hiring people with disabilities. Um, so it's really important that what we're teaching and educating on align with industry standards, and we implement those standards here from day one. So a colleague of mine says we're training people how to be employees.
Yes.
The hard skills of all of these areas are not hard for them to pick up, right? We want to make sure that they have the soft skills of employment readiness too.
Professionalism. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And frankly,
Yeah.
everyone needs that. Every young person needs.
Pretty or not, we all need that.
Absolutely. I have a 20-year-old in college. Like everyone needs that. Everybody needs that exposure in some way, shape, or form. And we're able to provide a platform where we can do that, but still provide an environment that is supportive. Because we also have disability experts on staff, folks that have masters in social work or education around special education and have worked with people with disabilities. So we're not only mindful about what we teach, but how we teach it.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. It sounds like you're reflecting the concept of growth mindset. It's not if a person can do something, but it's when will they be able to do it and how will they be able to do it. And sometimes we can get to the same finish line, but we might take different routes getting there. And it takes a knowledgeable and willing instructor or eventually employer who can say, absolutely, this person can do this job. Training might look different, or the accommodations and supports we put in place to enable them to do that work might be different. But the investment piece has to be there of, I think, the other leaders involved with that trainee eventual employee.
Yeah. And the beauty also of what we do is, I like to say, it's kind of, we provide a continuum of support. So we have a job
Mm.
services team that our training is unique. It's 26 weeks, which is significant. It's almost 6 months.
That's a good call out. I meant to say that I think I forgot
Yeah.
to in your introduction, but that's good for the audience to know.
It's significantly longer than the average 12 to 16 week workforce development training program. So we want our students to obtain and retain information, and we'll introduce a concept and continue to circle back on it to make sure. And so I bring up our job services because once our students have completed the program, they have the option to work with our job services program, which helps them put together a resume, right? Put together a cover letter, look for employment. They help with interviewing, and we will actually do job coaching at place of employment for up to 4 weeks. And what that looks like is really just helping to transition from Sunflower to their new place of employment with support. And what we've found is it opens up communication channels between employee and employer, and that it's really just helping our graduates apply what they've learned here in a new environment. And I can say that it's probably been as beneficial, if not more, for the employers than it's been for our students.
Yes, yes. Those who have been in that space know that. And just sometimes it's just not knowing what you don't know. And when that employer kind of has that safety net of that professional or the individual, if they're a strong advocate and they know how to communicate their needs, that's great. Sometimes they might need a little bit of support even in that part. But I've been so pleasantly surprised by the managers that we've worked with at In Good Company who they've had zero experience in this. They were a little bit reserved, not because they were trying to be exclusive. They just didn't know what they didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so to have somebody on site with them, it's all great in theory. And then you're there at the first shift, the first training, and a question pops up. It is so nice just to have that person that you can ask the silly question to without feeling judged or.
Absolutely. And I think we can demonstrate like accommodations are generally not a big deal, right? We'll put together a checklist. We do that here, right? And so,
Checklist for my job.
yes, agreed. I do too. And so that's all this person needs. Yeah, that's all.
Mhm.
And after the 4 weeks, we'll continue to check up, have some check-in calls. But also what we ask our partners is if you're struggling with your employee, give us a call. Let
Mm.
us see what we can do to help support or
Mhm.
remedy the situation. And so we found that to be very successful. It's not perfect, right? Life gets in the way of every person at some point, and you can have your own struggles. And, to be clear, like these are entry level jobs. we're not, we're talking about minimum wage jobs. And what I can say, because I believe fully, is that our graduates are head and shoulders above their neurotypical counterparts because of their dependability, loyalty, and work ethic. And
Mm,
these are three key things that we've heard from our employer partners that they look for in new employees. It
absolutely.
takes a lot of time and money and effort to hire people.
Oh yeah. Turnover. We were looking at hospitality, hotels. The cost of one turned over position, entry level, was $1,300.
Yeah.
By
Yeah.
the time you've paid overtime for someone else to compensate for that vacant role and recruitment and training, and there's higher errors at the beginning of training, like, that's expensive, and then multiply that by the number of roles they have to fill. That is a real business value. We are talking about good business, not just doing good, even though it is good and wonderful, and it will enhance your team morale, your customer experience, because they're being served by excellent professionals.
Yeah, and there's an economic argument for this, which is what I think you're alluding to. And there is research to support this, not enough research, right? But there is research that speaks to the value of hiring individuals with disabilities. And I think, to our conversation, part of it is just the unknown. And sometimes the unknown is scary, or you just feel like it's going to take too much time. But the benefit will pay off immensely. And, what I will say is, our graduates are just like anyone else. They want economic mobility, but they're not going to jump to the next thing just because it's a next opportunity. They want to be part of a team. They want to be a contributing member of their community. And I think that is really the advantage that our graduates bring to employment.
Did you know there are nearly 200 small businesses in the U.S. who are on a mission to employ individuals with disabilities? And we want to send shoppers their way. That's where you come in. Join the In Good Company passport game and support businesses that are moving the needle for disability employment. Here's how you play. Choose 3 businesses featured on our passport, snap photos with each visit or online purchase, and share them on your Instagram. Tag IGC with us and the business you supported, and we'll send you a prize. Grab your passport and instructions in the show notes or on our Instagram page today. Jody, I've been putting it off for too long. Let's just get into the employer partners that you've developed. Can you walk us through? I'd love it if you could think of an example specifically of an employer partner who may have been on the fence at the beginning. And what was the process like to win over that trusted partnership where they were saying, hey, we hired 1, 2, maybe 3 graduates from Sunflower Bakery, and Jody, can you send us 10 more? They're great. Do you have any stories of someone who started on the fence and became a true partner and ally?
It's a good question. I do think well, there are several employer partners that the owners or managers have had some relation of somebody with a disability in their life, right? So they're predisposed to kind of giving it a try. There are others, which if you think about franchises and grocery store chains, where it takes a little bit more, right? And so one thing that we do is we've done employer surveys, but we also brought employer partners together for a meeting this year to talk about what are their needs, how can we support them, but also what are they seeing in trends for the future now and in the future of what they're going to need in their industries.
That's a great question.
And I love that there's no better reference, if you will, than an employer partner speaking to a prospective employer partner, right? Because they've got no skin in the game. They're
Mhm.
both with the same mindset. They're in business and they need to succeed. And having that kind of feedback or reference of that experience, I think has been invaluable too. We'd like to enhance that more, right? Providing that kind of employer to employer network. But there have been folks that have been on the fence. I think part of it is if they're willing to dedicate a little bit of time to get to know us, what we do, and come see what we do. When you walk in our door, you see our mission in action. But when an employer partner goes back into the kitchen, they're amazed. Our kitchen is humming.
Mm.
It's organized. It's quiet. Everyone has like an individualized task that contribute to a whole. For example, someone might be scooping cookie dough, but somebody else might be baking it off later, right? It is a well-oiled machine. And if I might say so myself, our kitchen tends to be as organized, if not more, than some of our employer partners, just because our students thrive on structure and consistency, which is exactly why baking was the beginning of our organization, because you have to be very precise with baking. There is a recipe. It's not like culinary where you can be like, oh, this just needs a little bit more salt. No, you can't overbake something and have it. So a lot of people need this, but especially somebody with a disability needs that structure and consistency. And that's what we offer. And that sometimes we've also had employer partners say, how can I structure my kitchen more like yours? Because it benefits everyone, right? We have color codes on our rolling pins. We have colored dots on items in our freezer. Like everything is labeled and there's systems around how we do things. So it's not, if I should say, rocket science. It's just good processes, procedures, and organization. Yes, we've had employer partners on the fence when they get to know us and they see. My colleague John likes to tell a story of an employer partner who came in and was observing our kitchen and said, what do you do when somebody just starts yelling in the kitchen? And John turned to him and said, I don't know. What do you do in your kitchen when somebody starts? He's like, that doesn't happen. Right. So there are these myths about people with disabilities that we are dispelling, but it requires some time and investment to be able to get to know us.
I love the light bulbs that go off when a manager asks a question. And we really do try not to say that was a silly question because I'm just glad they're asking. When you can say exactly what you just said, well, what would you do with any other employee? If any other employee is late or has their cell phone, isn't there a consequence? Yes, use that same standard with all employees, including those with disabilities, because you're a business. Hey, would color coding help this person? Yeah. And by the way, it also helps probably everyone on the team kind of row in the same direction and go by the same processes.
And
So yes,
it just,
process it like this, just get business sense to have
yes. And it
process.
just, the difference with our graduates, it just may be how you have to relay it, right? Start
Mhm.
with good expectations and then accountability.
Yeah, the follow through
Mm-hmm.
and the holding everyone to the same standard.
Exactly. Exactly. I will say we've had some challenges in the past in terms of having a manager really champion us and wanting to bring in a graduate into their business. And then they don't do the due diligence. They place the graduate. They're not the manager of the graduate, of the new employee. And it doesn't work well because there hasn't been the proper introduction and no one knows why this person is there. And there hasn't also been that kind of relaying of, hey, this is the culture that we're creating in our business, right? One of
Mhm.
inclusion, one of acceptance. And we're hiring Sam, for lack of a better term. And Sam's going to be doing this. And this is how Sam needs to communicate, right? If you need to connect with them. So that's why we started job services too, just to make sure that we could provide that added support and make sure that our graduates are going into an environment that is going to be not just support them, but support all the employees there, right?
Yeah, yeah. I We have seen that happen as well, and it's really disheartening when the candidate new hire has done the work and done the training and they're ready to go. Like you said, maybe one manager was on board or the person at the top of the pyramid was bought in, but the message wasn't relayed to the rest of the leadership. And it's such an easy chasm to bridge, to, fill, but it does take intentionality and communication. And then those kind of simple aha moments can come. Oh, it's just like with another employee, but it does take communication. So I'm glad that you've been able to see that. And I'm sure you're proactive going into placements in a lot of ways. But for businesses out there who might be in their first year or two or three, what would you say? Because it's so encouraging. And I love sharing the examples of models like Sunflower Bakery, who you've been at it a while, you're growing, you're successfully seeing more and more adults find employment. Um, you were once that young company, kind of figuring out what's your model, where's funding coming from, how are we going to address it, because different problem solvers can come at it from different angles, and we need that. We need the for-profits and the nonprofits, we need the bakeries, and we need the data center. What would you say to someone who's still trying to figure out who they are and what they're going to do to successfully chip away at the problem?
Yeah, great question. And I've had some conversations with folks, and I think sometimes the idea of like creating a bakery seems very nice. But then I always go back to what's your goal, right? What is your goal in all of this? And what's your niche, right? So, why I say that is because and I talked with somebody in New York about this. For us, our goal was employment, right? Competitive employment in the community. And then the niche became, what if we made kosher parve baked goods? And what I mean by that, kosher parve means dairy free. And actually had a business school do a study to see if there was a market there, right?
Smart.
There was, that became our niche, right? So we had kind of a built-in audience or a built-in market, if you will, right? Whereas the folks I was talking with in New York, like in New York, you can get everything you want at any time, like kosher, like, and it's good, right? Here, there were not a lot of options. So that was our niche. So it's like, what can kind of accelerate your goal? And I will say, and I've said this probably till I'm blue in the face, I've been in the nonprofit space my entire career, 25 plus years, and part of wonderful organizations that have a great mission and they fundraise against it and then want to become a social enterprise. It is so hard to do once you've already been established. The fact that they literally and figuratively had this baked into the model in the very beginning is truly visionary because yes, do we still fundraise? Absolutely. But we have this social enterprise, and having both of those revenue streams keeps us diversified. It keeps our finances healthy because if there's a downturn in the economy or something's going on in another space, we have others to lean on. So it's that I think has also been a determining factor of our success. And so what's your goal? How do you get there? And if you have a niche or not? And like, what's the demand? Saying a little bit about how we expand. Like we start with what's the best service to our students, right? Is there a market for them? And then is there a market for us? Because our training is experiential. Our students have a role in everything we make ourselves. Once you're in phase 2 or the second 13 weeks of your training, you're actually helping to run the retail operations or you're producing for orders or inventory. And so one of our challenges is, but it's a good problem to have, is that we almost have to grow all the areas of our organization or business, for lack of a better term, at the same rate, right? In order to grow our baked goods or culinary, we need to have the students, right? But if we have too many students and we don't have enough orders, then we're not doing them a service because we're not training them at the level they need to be trained to be ready to go out into the world. So that growth model has been, a consistent kind of piece that we grapple with, especially as we've just started culinary. So this year we have a lot of demand for our classes, which is amazing. I think we're going to have our first wait list in July.
Wow.
And we're kind of hitting the ground running and connecting and on marketing and outreach to a lot of potential customers who know us and love us for our baked goods, but are not as aware that we have a kosher meat kitchen now. We have all these prepared kosher foods and we have a catering menu as well. So it's not chicken or the egg, but like one follows the other. And so that is something that we continue to think about, grapple with, and make sure that we're on a good trajectory. But I would say, summing that up, is like, ultimately, what do you seek for your population? What's the best way you can get there? And how do you differentiate yourself from others doing similar work?
Those are really, really good points. If you're not already, I think you should teach a seminar on this because I think there's a lot of lived experience and wisdom that you've gained by doing it. And I really like what you said about diversifying, how you're receiving funds, earning revenue through your products that you're selling. That's important because the world changes and grants ebb and flow. And we're in a time right now where I think that's really challenging for many people. So encouraging founders, especially of these younger businesses, to find creative ways to keep the cash flowing
Yeah.
is a good one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you are correct. And we're doing contingency planning, right? Because, if you will, the area of the nation's capital, and there's a lot of uncertainty right now. But what I go back to is we're as diversified as we potentially can be. Yes, could we be doing more? Sure, we're exploring opportunities, but you need to continue to evolve that model based upon kind of what environmental factors may affect it, but also just to grow and evolve as an organization. Like we do big moves like a new program, but we also bought a fryer last year. Why? We had some students go to a donut shop and they'd never fried donuts. But not only that, most of our graduates, if they go work in a kitchen, they're going to be exposed to a fryer with hot oil. How do we teach them to use it safely?
I think I would be afraid to step up to a fryer for that reason. So, yeah, that's really practical and smart.
And now we sell donuts.
Oh my gosh, what do you not do? You're making me hungry. I am going to have to place an online order after this call now. Jody, I have one final question for
Sure,
you.
sure.
It's my favorite question to ask because, in this space, there's a lot of problem to go around, but we also have a growing number of problem solvers who are taking different approaches. Like I said earlier, we need different approaches because the challenges are complex. But if you could name, you can name one, you can name a couple, I'll leave it up to you. But if you could name and highlight a group that you're a fan of that's doing important work to support the adult piece of the puzzle for the disability community, who would you name?
I think full stop, I would name Main Street. It is an apartment building that was literally brought to fruition by a woman named Jillian Copeland. And there are a certain number of apartments dedicated to people with disabilities. And there are a certain number of apartments dedicated to anybody who wants to live there. It's right in the heart of Rockville, Maryland. It's right across the street from Metro. And it is a true inclusive experience. That I think needs to be lifted up. They do have some employment opportunities for some of the residents there, either through their cafe or their front desk. They do a ton of amazing programming, but they are, in my opinion, a model of how we should be thinking as a society, right? How do we just make it natural to be inclusive? Whether you have a disability, whether you're low income, whether it shouldn't matter. And I love what they're doing because I do believe that inclusivity, regardless of the population, fosters, first of all, dispels myths, but ultimately fosters more acceptance and tolerance. And I think as a society, we could use a lot more of that. And it just enables conversation and people getting to know each other. I will say I grew up in Western Kentucky, and the class of students with disabilities was totally segregated. You never interacted with them. You maybe saw them in the hallway, but that was my experience, right? And then having a son with a developmental disability just opened up that world that I had never known. And why do we need to be that way? There's a lot of parallel kind of employment, living, what have you. And if we choose to be, we can be a truly integrative society. And in my opinion, it makes us all richer for it.
Yes, Jody, yes. I like to say it makes us more complete.
I like that.
When we talk about it in Good Company, building an inclusive workforce, what I think we're really working towards is a complete workforce, as in part of us is missing until this group is working with and among us. So I think it sounds like Main Street is doing that as well.
They are.
I'm glad you highlighted them. All right, well, we'll be sure to link them in the show notes as well for anyone up in your area.
Awesome. Thank you.
We will absolutely link the option to shop with you all.
Thank you.
In the show notes. And you told me you have a special coming up. Do you want to tell us about that real quick?
Sure. We plan to put together a menu, a discounted menu for federal workers and contractors who have lost their jobs. So we are successful because of our community, and we want to make sure that we are here to support our community when they need it.
That's lovely. Well, Jody, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for all that you do to be a lead problem solver and change maker in this way. Your work has a true impact on your trainees who have disabilities. It has an impact on the employers who have the absolute pleasure of hiring them and seeing them thrive on their teams and contribute in real ways. And I know we can't see our audience members, but I know your words and your story today will be encouraging and impactful for them as well as they're taking steps to work towards similar solutions. So thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you for highlighting Sunflower and our good work.
Thanks for joining us on In Good Company. I hope this conversation gave you what you needed to take your next step. Special thanks to Georgia Tech's Institute for Leadership and Social Impact for the recording space and the coffee. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, share, or leave a review to help more leaders like you find us. Want more tools, frameworks, or a community of like-minded advocates? Head over to igcwithus.com to learn more. We'd love to connect. Until next time, keep building what wasn't there before. You're in good company.